This is the first meeting of a Palestinian government official to the Philippines since the Philippines has recognized the state of Palestine in 1989. So it's been over 3 decades for that recognition, and this is the first visit. It is timely because of everything that is going on in the Middle East and specifically in Palestine, Israel. And the meetings have spanned several activities. I had meetings at Foreign Affairs. I've met with Minister Lazaro. We had political consultations. We talked about the situation in Palestine, the prospects for peace. We talked about issues that we might be tackling in the future through various MOUs to strengthen our bilateral relations and future cooperation in general. I had a meeting with a cardinal, and I'll have another meeting with another cardinal today, and those meetings are important to speak on the steadfastness of Palestinian Christians and the dwindling number of Palestinian Christians in Palestine, and the need to ensure that that Christian presence is maintained and it is strengthened, and what role the church has in that regard. I also had several sessions with students, diplomats, researchers. I had 2 presentations, one at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, one yesterday at De La Salle University, and I'll have one lecture today at Ateneo University. I also participated in a very important event, an event that was organized by the Palestine Embassy in the Philippines on the Palestine National Day and the International Day on the Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And that was attended by over 230 people, diplomats and others. And I believe that was an excellent opportunity to show Palestinian cuisine, Palestinian dress, Palestinian art, etc. I also met with several Arab and foreign diplomats. In all the encounters, the focus was on the plight of the Palestinians. The plight of the Palestinians, especially today, after a 2-year of a genocidal war in Gaza and continuing aggression and violations of rights on the West Bank. So the situation on the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and strangled East Jerusalem were part and parcel of basically all meetings. The stress was on the steadfastness of the Palestinian people and the need to embark on a peace process that will bring us closer to independence of a state of Palestine. Today, there's of course a window of opportunity with the Trump plan. That is a starting point of something that we hope that is a prelude to something that is much bigger than just a ceasefire on the Gaza-Israel front. We also discussed what is required from the international community, and the focus in all the meetings was on international law, because Palestinians want to use nothing but international law and international mechanisms. Of course, the New York Declaration and what that entails and how that can be taken forward, the empowerment of the Palestinian Authority, the much needed humanitarian assistance, the reconstruction of Gaza, the peace in the entirety of the occupied Palestinian territory, because if we are aspiring peace, then the Palestinian territory is one integral territory. We don't talk about separated entities or territories. It's just one territory, occupied territory. And additionally, the reform agenda of the Palestinian Authority was present in those discussions. We have embarked on an elaborate reform agenda. It includes political, fiscal, institutional, security, socioeconomic, and reforms related to basic services. So in a nutshell, this is what I have been engaged in the last 4 days. I'm very pleased with the meetings. As I said, they were very productive. There are several issues that we can move on with for the future in terms of strengthening our relationship with the Philippines. So I'm ready to entertain your questions.
Yeah, from Rappler. Could you speak more to us about how your government intends to meet the requirements of reform by the international community, as you mentioned earlier, the reform agenda? And maybe you can also talk to us about what help countries like the Philippines, we don't have that much resources to give monetarily, right, to contribute towards that goal. You already mentioned political consultations, but what other ways can Palestine and the Philippines move forward?
Okay. Let me talk about the Palestine and the Philippines first, and then I'll go to the agenda, the reform agenda. We need to see what niche the Philippines has. If the Philippines is good in agriculture, Philippines is good in healthcare, and we know because there are so many Filipino workers all around, especially in the Middle East, the Gulf areas, that work in healthcare. And that would be an example of where we can build a relationship with the Philippines. Same with agriculture. So we would look at what Philippines is best at and what Palestine needs the most and try to match these two together. In terms of the reform agenda, we are reforming not only because the international community wants us to reform. We are reforming because we as Palestinians believe in reform and believe that if we want to be on par with the rest of the world, we need to do better with our organizations. And let's remember, we are still a state in the making. And as such, we need to be judged as a state in the making. We cannot be judged as a normal state, as a state that has been ongoing for ages, and then whether reform is needed or not. No, we are developing and we learn from our experiences, we learn from our mistakes. Our people deserve better institutions. We need to develop institutions that are more effective and more efficient, and as such, we are reforming. Now, the international community wants us to reform, that's fine. But I want to stress a point, that this reform, although it is tied with the political track, to me as a Palestinian, I have to make sure that the whole world understands that my right in terms of a political track and independence should not be tied with reform, because that's enshrined in international law. My right to self-determination is a right enshrined in international law. It should not be dependent on anything else. However, we have accepted to embark on a reform agenda. We have an elaborate reform agenda that is made public. Anyone can look at this reform agenda, and we are producing progress reports on that reform agenda, telling the international community every once in a while how we are doing in terms of the indicators and the milestones we have set to achieve. And I can assure you that in the last report, it is very clear that we have achieved every single milestone in that agenda. And in fact, we have surpassed some of the milestones. And if you look at the EU reports, they will tell you that they are satisfied with the way we are moving on that reform agenda. That agenda includes several components. For example, in terms of governance, we're looking at elections, when to hold elections, of course, when the time is conducive, a year after the war, the aggression on Gaza, the genocidal war on Gaza subsides, and there is a complete halt of aggression, a sustainable ceasefire. And of course, the environment needs to be conducive, meaning that people in the Gaza Strip, Palestinians on the Gaza Strip, in East Jerusalem and the West Bank can elect their officials. Because if we want elections on the entirety of the occupied territory, not on a specific part of the territory, and not as a logistic process. Because East Jerusalem is part and parcel of occupied territory, and as such, Palestinians residing or citizens in East Jerusalem should be able to elect their Palestinian officials. And now the ball is with the international community to convince the occupier state of Israel that Palestinian Jerusalemites are part and parcel of the Palestinian occupied population, and as such, they need to be permitted to elect their Palestinian officials. We're also having other reform measures in terms of how we manage our finances, how we look at the security forces, how we develop a leaner public service, etc., etc.